Good evening, everyone. Please be seated. Sorry, just a little technical oversight here. Welcome everybody to City Council meeting, regular meeting for Tuesday, October the 10th at 7 p.m. in the City Hall Council Chambers. I'd like to call the meeting to order and first recognize that we are on the traditional unceded territory of the Hupetchesut and Sechot First Nation. Any late items, Councillor? Councillor McClellan?
Mr. Mayor, I guess just in the agenda, I noticed that there's nothing in here about the budget. We were talking about starting it in October, and as I changed my vacation to make that happen so I could be at it, I'm just wondering if that's going to be discussed tonight or at what point in October.
Thank you, Mr. Deacon.
Mr. Mayor, we will not be presenting the draft budget to council tonight or in October. I'm currently working with staff on that, and we'll get a draft financial plan to council as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you. I heard as soon as we can, but are we thinking November?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a hard date for you, and I don't want to give you a date and then not live up to that. Staff's working diligently at it. I haven't got a target date for you.
Okay, thank you. City Clerk, any late items?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, under correspondence for action H4 from Applied Environmental Research Laboratories.
Okay, thank you. A motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council, as has been the practice in the last little bit, this is time to do a few things. First item that I want to start with are the historical notes. And this is in recognition of the 50th anniversary of the 1967 amalgamation of the cities of Alberni and Port Alberni. The Alberni Valley Museum, on the recommendation of the Alberni Valley Heritage Commission, has prepared these historical notes. They are for presentation at our council meetings during September and October in the lead up to the actual amalgamation date of October 28th. These notes offer a snapshot of what was going on 50 years ago as the Twin Cities prepared for amalgamation in 1967. The information comes from 1967 editions of the West Coast Advocate and the Twin City Times, as well as other documents from the Alberni District Historical Society Community Archives. This week, in 1967, the Centennial Amalgamation Committee announced the naming of Echo 67 Center. From over 2,000 submissions, it chose the name submitted by Jane Hansen, a grade 5 student at Wood Elementary School. She won $100 for her choice of name, based on how your voice echoes when you call your friend in a pool. The interim council for the amalgamated city was selected by secret ballot, with Mayor Les Hammer of Port Alberni chosen as the interim mayor. Mayor Fred Bishop of Alberni would be an alderman with the title of deputy mayor. Bishop confirmed he would run for mayor in the next election, but said that the makeup of the interim council had been a mutual decision. He stated, "I have discussed my decision with Mayor Hammer to ensure no rivalry will mar the integration of our cities." In 1968, Bishop became the first elected mayor of the amalgamated city of Port Alberni. In other news from 50 years ago, the Provincial Department of Education announced its decision to make Son of Raven, Son of Deer by George Clutesy part of the grade 4 language arts curriculum, marking the first time in the history of BC education that a text written by a First Nations author had been selected. Thank you. And I also believe that we have something special for council. I believe that our city clerk has a special picture that she'd like to show. And you will see here in our parking lot a picture of Port Alberni City's newest acquisition, a hybrid van that is going to be used, I believe, by the IT department, CAO. Am I correct?
Mr. Mayor, it'll be heavily used by our IT department, but it's available to all city departments, including council and economic development, for example, to move people around. So it's a resource to the entire city.
That's great. It's something that we've been working on as a city for a number of years now, and we finally have one. And you can see on the left-hand side there at the front of the van a charging station, and that charging station actually is going to be moved over so that it'll be between two of the parking spots, and we'll be able to eventually plug in two vehicles there. So this hybrid vehicle is both gas and electric, and when it requires additional power, it switches over to the gas, and other than that, it runs on electric. So it's an interesting model. So, thank you, City Clerk. Council, we have minutes from the special meeting held at 4 p.m. and the regular council meeting held at 7 p.m. on September 18th. A motion to adopt those minutes would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And council, that then brings us to the public input period. It's an opportunity for the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. A maximum of 4 speakers for no more than 3 minutes each will be accommodated. Anybody wish to address council? Mr. Deacon?
Mr. Mayor and councilors, I wish to bring 2 very time-sensitive, relevant matters to your attention. The first is that North Island College and the Vancouver Island North Film Commission are offering a 3-week film production assistance course here in Port Alberni from November 6th to November 27th. The $275 only tuition for the course is being heavily subsidized as a pilot project and normally costs anywhere between $2,500 and $3,000. There may be an opportunity for a television series job at the end of the program, and several components of the course are transferable to other sectors of the economy. Some interviews for the program are taking place at North Island College here in Port Alberni tomorrow and Thursday. For more information, call Sharon Coral at 250-830-7762. Additional film and TV crew training as a lighting technician, film or TV grip, and for set construction will be taking place in January. The second item is that the city's Economic Development Office, in conjunction with one of Canada's foremost social media companies, Seekers Media, is sponsoring a 3-session social media workshop at the McLean Mill Historic Park on Tuesday, October 24th from 1 to 6:30 p.m. The first session will cover video production with Chris Wheeler. The second will cover photo and story production with Matt Malsteller. And the third will cover blogging and social media strategy with Rebecca Balwett, otherwise known as Miss 604. You can sign up for any of the sessions or all of them by Googling Eventbrite Port Alberni, where Bright is spelled B-R-I-T-E. And the streaming session has focused on the contacts for those as I've been speaking. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Deacon. Council, then that brings us to our delegations. We have one delegation, and it's Ray Letourneau. is in attendance to present his plans for the new, as the new owner of the Arrowview Hotel. Welcome, Mr. Letourneau. Just to remind you, delegations are limited to 10 minutes. And,
Okay.
and then if council has any questions afterwards, we would, we'll ask them once you're finished. I'll remind you that there's 2 minutes when you get to about the 8-minute mark.
I'll get that far anyways. I think I frame it, my feeling is, because I've been in discussion with several of your colleagues already, is I think you guys will probably pose the questions to me, and I'll go in those directions, because I think there's some issues that with this property that in the past, and I want to move us forward from there. So,
Okay.
but my name's Ray Letourneau. I'm not into development or anything. I'm an engineer, and I work in technology. I work in technology enablement. I've done 12 years in Asia. My last 6 have been in Silicon Valley, developing career opportunities for Cisco, Apple, and these types of things. And so as I found myself back up in British Columbia again, I'm from Vancouver, I've been really looking at the stuff I've been doing and delivering it to worldwide markets. I realized that, in fact, the model I have is very much a rural and small community economic strategy. And I've actually, a little bit, I've talked with Pat in the past. I've also talked with Scott about my plans. And so where I've been developing this is not necessarily was Port Alberni. It was looking at various communities, and I was looking at where I would develop models. And, try a model here and see how this can work and how maybe I can bring the skills I've been developing for other communities around the world, how we can bring it into the province. And there's a little depth into it, and I won't get into why I think this or where I think these markets are going. So that's where this plan that I've been working on has developed. It was prior to this. And where I came across the Arrowview was in where the process you guys were going through, it had come to my attention. And I realized as I'd been looking at Port Alberni as a place that I'd like to maybe use as one of the models for the city of what I want to develop. And so when I seen that property, I said this will be, I sort of looked at where its location was in the city, looking at the strategy of this city and so forth. And so that's kind of where I led to going to purchase this property and seeing myself as using this property as sort of the core of the model I want to start. I'm going to try and work with the province with this. So even though I may segment off into other rural communities, I'm looking to develop and see how I can work with Port Alberni and the community to see where we could take this. That's maybe give you the framework of where I'm coming from and what I want to develop with the property. In terms of the property, there's a number of steps I see. Obviously, you guys, when I've talked to Scott about this, everyone seems to be pretty good with me in terms of going forward. But I've been brought to now is that I need to come to council because you guys already have the property slated for some issues. So Scott recommended I come and see you first, explain to you what I'm planning on doing. I guess getting your nod in terms of me going forward. And that's why I said I'd kind of leave this open, because I believe that a lot of the questions or the queries you're going to have is terms of, it'll come from you, because I'm not sure whether you want to know more about my plan, more about the property, and so I think that in terms of the strategy, that I want to take this property, I want to restore it, and I want to create my business within the model, and how we can move forward with the city and so forth. That's sort of, I think, a work in progress. This is kind of my second step. I've talked with Scott a lot. I bug Pat a little bit. He's keen on my business plan, and we leave the property out of the discussion. So that's kind of my plans for this building, for where I want to go forward with it, and I can dive into it. But maybe it's better I let you sort of maybe ask me what you'd like, and I can dive into what's more of concern or interest for you, or where you'd like to see it, or what your queries are. Does that make sense?
Just a couple things, Mr. Letourneau. Mm-hmm. One is that I understand you haven't finalized the purchase of the property yet. But
Yeah, it's through the lawyers, so within this week, it's already finalized.
Okay. But I know we're anxious to hear what your plans are for that property and if you've got an idea of timelines and so on, that would be of particular interest, certainly to me, and I would imagine the rest of council would be interested as well.
I mean, in terms of preparing for this, there's been a few sort of hurdles. One was the agreement that Mr. Johnson had with the city was up to July 25th or somewhere around there. At that point, I've had to go overseas. So I came back in September. So in terms of that, I have been doing some due diligence in terms of identifying contractors and identifying the work. So I've been in discussion with the engineers looking at what work will need to be done in terms of structural things and where we move from there. I've also got bids on how we're going to look at sort of improving the image of the building itself. Having said that, I'm still at the point of getting the nod from the city council, but first and foremost is to move forward as soon as possible, to start bringing it. First of all, you're looking at it as an eyesore, and I feel that's probably the biggest contentious issue here is you have a building that you're wanting to see some change. So we want to develop that way. Then the work on the engineering will move forward as soon as possible. I have contractors in line. I've got quotes for many of the works I need to have done. So in terms of timeline, I think it's probably, what I was thinking is in terms of giving you a clear timeline, once I have a nod from the city, probably by your next city council meeting, I can probably give you a much better schedule of where the engineers feel that we can start working on foundation, whether we can start working on the structure, how, at the same time, I'll probably start to work on the facade a little bit. I don't want to dive into the facade until we really come up with the architectural design of the building. If there's going to be changes, are we going to keep a lot of the heritage image of the front of the building and how we'll approach it. So in terms of timeline, I'm ready to start to get things going as soon as possible. And in terms of saying that this month we'll have this, I don't think we're at that point yet until I get a green light and I can bring people in. The same engineer that's been working on the building from the past, I've already sat down with him, so we're in discussions. We can move forward with him and so forth. A lot of these things I've mentioned to Scott already. And so I think I'm good in terms of timeline. I'm good to start getting this going very soon. I would believe that probably by next council meeting, I can probably give you a more detailed schedule of here's the work plan and so forth like that. I don't know if that answered your question or is...
It answers my question.
Okay.
I'm not, Councillor Alberni and then Councillor McLennan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is it's exciting, I think, for City Council because we were expecting to have to pull the building down. So I without a huge amount of detail, it's hard to know what to expect. But I mean, I think this is exactly the type of thing that we've been hoping to see as far as a redevelopment of a major city block and building into something in the new economy. So that's encouraging. I just hope that you're successful. I know there's a lot of concerns around that building, and I don't know whether it's too far gone. And I'm sure you'll have to do the due diligence that you've already done. But I mean, power
There's
to
always
you.
a surprise in the building. Every
Yeah.
corner has a little nail that's missing or something. But yeah, that's why I say we've been on kind of as I said, I had to go abroad, so that kind of put a delay. But I have been trying to dig in deeper and also trying to dig in with your colleagues here at the same time is find out about zoning. There's issues with zoning here. The zoning is not a C7, it's a C3. And so, but those things, again, I've talked with Scott. I'll have to go through the process. And as I'll assure all of you is the one thing he keeps stressing, and obviously my intentions are, is everything is about code. I'm not looking to shortcut things or anything. I don't come with a big payroll, nothing like that. But I believe I feel strong about the model. And I believe that this model should work, it can work, and if I can work with the community and so forth, I think that we can get somewhere. I don't know if that's clear or not, but
Okay, Councillor McLennan.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess I'm just sitting here picturing the building, and you say you're going to redo it. The walls are jewel poked out, as
Right.
you've seen.
yeah.
Do you have a way of getting them in?
Sure,
And
yes.
what is your, what's the business or the program or whatever that would be there?
Oh, you mean what I'm planning my model?
Well, whatever it
yeah,
is.
so
yeah.
the companies I've worked with is Cisco and that network. It's all about technology and whether people realize. I mean, I'm preaching on a philosophy here, but the world's about to be hit with a bunch of jobs, and I've been working everywhere, and I've been going abroad all the time to deliver the training. Most of the training I give is about, it's all high-end. It's either $50,000, $100,000 a year jobs very easily, and so it's very good career jobs. It doesn't mean you're going to have a whole bunch, but there's going to be opportunities, and if we can get people in position to take advantage of these opportunities coming forward. So it would fall in technology. It falls in a lot of things. Because nowadays technology is mixed. You could throw biology into network, and you can, so it's a big mix, and nothing's clear, because the model really works off, I believe, is one is the willingness of a community and the resources of a community. And what I've seen, an example in Port Alberni, is you have a strategy. Usually you have a industrial town who's transitioning, but within that industrial town you have a lot of expertise. And how you can take that expertise and marry it to what these future opportunities are going to be, and how you can work with the city to do that. And so, you know, maybe here is lumber and things like that. You have expertise in your mill here. I give you an example. I worked a lot with Rockwell. So Rockwell works a lot in your mill here, maybe doing the industrial controls. So they have a lot of different directions they're going to be moving in. How can we take the people who know about this stuff in your community and transfer it? Because a lot of it's going to be online. It's not about a company coming in. It's all about who can work and bring expertise to a company. And most of the people I hire when I do projects, I go everywhere from India to the US and everywhere in between. So why can't we just take the experts we have in our own backyard and try and position them? And I find that small communities tend to maybe not be aware of what's outside. So you're sort of reliant on what the province may show you. And so I'm just hoping that we can bring some of that insight, take the resources a community has, the expertise, marry it together, and develop a program where, you know, you're not going to get a lot. You might be a 3% or a 5% growth or something, but it's jobs. Because I think in these kind of communities, if you don't have a job to go to, you have to work from home. And most of the new jobs are going to be from home. And we've heard this before, and I'm not trying to pitch, you know, a simple job, but there's a lot of big careers out there, and there's a lot of technology, and it's moving fast, so it's not hard to learn. I went to university, but I always tell people you can get a $100,000 job in 6 months of studies if you want, if you pick the right path. And that, so I just know there's a lot of opportunities coming, and about 3 or 4 years, you either pick them up or you miss them, and they'll go to other places.
So you're going to do something in high technology or some such thing in that building? Or
I would like so at least get my office going in there. I'm sorry to jump in, so part of why I need some of the residents is what I would like to see in the future, and that's why I sort of thought of Port Alberni better than some of the other rural communities. If I'm trying to bring in people, say I bring in people from Cisco or Apple or do research or bring someone in from a university, I'd like to have some residence for them. And I find that this city would provide a lot better. Some of the rural communities, if I plant someone there out of Silicon Valley, they're going to want to leave in a week. Here you've got the Pacific Rim, you've got Long Beach. So I just feel that there's a lot to offer. So residence for people doing research with us and training, or at least conferences. I'd like to marry this with your existing education system. It doesn't mean it's always going to be perfect, but I'm not saying I only want to do training within that building. I may want to work with your community colleges, and as Pat just mentioned, the higher education folks and so forth. So little training, probably office, maybe some residence, maybe some conference space in there. The ground floor is already ideal for conference space. The second floor, I probably would like to get some office space in there and maybe some residence up top.
Okay.
And it won't fall down.
Well, that's the first step. You make sure it doesn't fall before you start the show, yes. You know, but that's the first step, yes.
Councillor Washington and then Councillor Sobey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question sort of got answered because people are going to say to you tomorrow, what's it going to be when it's done? So you've answered that with the conference center, the offices and residents there. So it will be sort of the same structure outside, but it's...
Yeah, I'm thinking the same structure. You know, I may try and maybe the residents will be on this side because that seems to be the Arrowview Hotel face anyways. I already came up with a name. It's called the Arrowview Institute, but that's a different story. But yeah, it would be like that. And I can give clearer details on and so forth. Mostly we've been focusing right now on what is it going to take to right the building and bring it forward, and without, you know, spending a fortune to do it, and yet do it right. And at the same time, my biggest problem is I've been focused on the politics of the building a little bit, when I really want to be focusing on the business model, so that I can sit down with Pat. Good night.
Thank you. Councillor Sobe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions have been pretty much answered. So if I look in layman terms, is that we're looking at a technology institution for training and in-house residential for those persons that are being trained, like a small campus. Am I right?
I would think like that, yes.
Okay.
And, you know, you may have to shift the model as we move forward and see what we're going to be able to develop and see how this city wants to work, you know.
Would this provide any type of local jobs for our local people here, or?
Hopefully it would create local jobs more than they, obviously, I mean, it would be working with the community. I mean, the big goal is to create careers for people locally. So if I'm working here and running a model in this city, this is where we want to develop jobs.
Yeah,
And
no,
so-
I understand that, but you're talking about online training, but now we're talking about in-class training?
We may
Okay.
do in-class training. The clarity on whether it's in-house, it's online, if it's stand-up, if it's, at home is not a clear vision yet. Depends on what the city wants to do, looking at what resources are clearly available that want to participate. So
And I guess my other questions are dealing with the engineering aspect of the building, but I guess it's kind of premature to talk about that right now, especially when we're dealing with the previous owner, as into the safety of the building, so.
Okay. Well, what I do know in terms of that, because I know that this is, all the engineering in terms of the safety of the building was brought up already. And Brad West has been working also with them, and that's who I will just take over Brad West as my engineer going forward because of his familiarity with the building. And so he's been already clear on where we should be focused on, and that, as I said, it's the first step is just getting a green light from you guys that we can participate together and work together. And I think in my next visit to you folks, or whether we give it to you in writing or how we do it, I think that'll be much clearer. I can give you a more detailed schedule of how we can work forward in that.
Okay. Councillor Paulson?
Yeah, I think the biggest short-term worry that we've always had with that building is the safety of the building, both
Okay.
to pedestrians that are around the building, but also there has been known to be interlopers staying in the building from time to time, and
Correct, yes.
just to get the building secured, and I'm concerned about the safety of the building and the integrity of the structure of itself.
Mhm.
So, if we could have some if I could have some reassurances with regards to safety and integrity of the building to begin
Okay,
with.
okay.
To me, it looks like if we got one of our severe winter storms, there's a potential that the roof could come down or the building itself could come down. I mean, that.
Correct.
But I'm not an engineer and I'm not a carpenter, but that would make me feel better if I knew that that building had integrity, that it could remain standing through thick and thin. And, I wish you luck with it, but there does come a point when you're doing a reno where it's just as cheap to take it down.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
put something up that's.
And some people have told me that.
Yeah.
Something happened, I seen that building, they said they were gonna tear it down, and I says, I know where my model's going.
Yeah.
In terms of your question, I'm not gonna speak for Mr. Johnson, but the integrity of the structure, not necessarily that people move in and all that, because you have other issues, you need, fire and everything like that, but the engineering structure of that building was sound in order to get the workers in. And so he had all that work done already, plus he had all the abatement, and before the abatement went forward, the structural side of it was taken care of. So I don't know if he's actually got documents to or something, but I've been clear with that, and that's why I've sat down with his engineer and we've talked. So the structure of the building, in order for people to work in already, had already been taken care of. It doesn't mean people can move in, and I do address your question about people trying to get in because they've tried to break locks and that. So that's one of the issues I'm sort of looking at, is deal with the facade, deal with the structure to make it sound so that people aren't, messing around with it every week and stuff like that. So absolutely, and you're correct. There was some graffiti. I got that taken down. I'm looking at different locks and stuff like that. So this is the first priority, is to take and sort of fill the little plugs that need to be addressed right away. And
Do
I
you
think
know if any of the engineering reports have been submitted to the city? To the city planner?
I don't.
or-
I wouldn't address that. I believe that discussions have been with Mr. Johnson and I believe with Scott. So I'm not going to speak for what documents, but I do know I've sat with the engineer myself, and the work was done in order, they had to do that work in order to have people working in there. So the whole basement has been shored up, and it's like doubled, I don't know what your terminology would be, but it's been really reinforced in that.
Well, as you know, this discussion's been going on for quite some time.
I've heard about it.
So there may be some impatience
Sure.
from our residents and from council, so just a forewarning.
I've been experienced that part of it. That's why I seem to be focused more on the building instead of my model plan, is that thing. But no, absolutely. And that's why I'm here tonight. That's what Scott was sort of leaning to, is you need to go and address this with council and, get their confidence in the plan before you do anything.
I think there is a deadline coming up, isn't there? Is there something in our...
I'm not sure about that, but I know that we've been working on it for a while.
Yeah, he's
So-
mentioned you had something in line that you were going to go off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So-
Okay. Anything else, Council? Councillor McClement?
Just one question. You made a lot of mention of working with council and so on. What do you see council's role as? Basically just giving you the legislative zoning and et cetera that you need?
Well, with council directly, yes, getting the green light. With the city and with people that develop your economic side, I look at sort of a bigger role of how the city would like to work and how we can all work together. Because I believe my model requires participation with the strategy of the city and where they want to go. There's no point for me to push an agenda when it's not really the agenda of the city. So it's not just about council, it's working with people within your city, people like Pat, I'm hoping. And
Okay.
Okay.
I don't see any other questions from council, so Mr. Letourneau, thank you very much for your presentation.
okay, thank you.
And
very much.
best of luck with your endeavor.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, that brings us, we don't have any unfinished business, so it brings us to staff reports. First report is on accounts, and Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated October 10, 2017 be received, and checks numbering 139762 to 139990 inclusive, and payments of accounts totaling $2,018,536.37 be approved.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And council from City Clerk, we have the Argyle-Stevenson boundary extension. We have a report dated November 28th advising on the next steps in the Argyle-Stevenson boundary extension process and requesting council's approval to proceed with an alternative approval process. City Clerk, any critical things we should have before we proceed to the motion?
No, Mr. Mayor, the report is hopefully clear. It just outlines where we've come to this point. This is the two lots at the top end of Argyle Street, 51st Avenue. Council had previously given direction to proceed with the boundary extension. So we've been following the process that is prescribed by the province, and which requires input from our neighbouring jurisdictions and First Nations. And the next step now is, with that in hand and the province's initial review, is to proceed to get the approval of the electors. So for this situation, the simplest way to do that is through the alternative approval process.
Right, okay, thank you. Councillor Alaman, are you able to make that motion? And if we get it seconded, and if there are any questions from council, we can ask.
That the report from the city clerk dated September 28th, 2017 be received, and council for the city of Port Alberni directs staff to proceed with the alternate approval process to obtain the approval of the electors to include lots 5 and 6, block 16, district lot 132, ACRD, within the city's boundaries, with a deadline for receipt of elector response forms indicating opposition to the proposed boundary extension of 4:30 on Monday, November 27th, 2017.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions, council? All those in favor? Carried. And again, City Clerk, we have another request for a boundary extension on Johnson Road. We have your report dated October 4th, 2017, advising of a request from the owner of 3376 and 3386 Johnson Road to include the properties within the city's boundaries for development purposes. Anything further on that, City Clerk, that you wish to highlight?
Not in particular, Mr. Mayor. It is shown on the screen, the properties in question, which would include a portion of road on Vanderkar Avenue as well. And again, we'll be following the process outlined by the province and proceeding to inform and discuss with our neighbours and First Nations. And eventually we will come back to council with the results of that and once again to get the approval of the electors. So this is the first step in this particular boundary extension proposal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions, are you able to make that motion, please?
That the report dated October 4th, 2017 from the city clerk be received and council for the city of Port Alberni proceed with a proposal to include Lot A, DDEP 41630, District Lot 152, Alberni District Plan 7451, except part in Plan VIP 52692, 3376 Johnson Road, and Lot A, District Lot 152, Alberni District Plan VIP 57061, 3386 Johnson Road within the city's boundaries. And that council for the city of Port Alberni authorize staff to develop, sign, and submit the proposal to the provincial government.
Is there a seconder?
Second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? Councillor Minions?
Thank you. I'm just curious why the section of road? Is that just road we need to maintain? Couldn't we just have the properties?
Typically, Mr. Mayor, the province asks us to look at, and probably the Director of Development Services can answer this better than I, but we are required to look at what makes sense and to include portion of road, which of course we would then be required to maintain as well. So in this particular instance, it makes sense to include the portion of road, but as I said, Director of Development Services could probably answer better.
And it is, of course, up to the province, but these days it's actually not an option. The province is pretty much saying if you want the properties to come into your city boundaries, you're going to get the adjacent road in order to maintain that. It's changed over the years. Sometimes you didn't used to have to do that. Then they used to do, you get one half of the road and the ministry would get responsibility for the other half of the road, which didn't work out well for either side. Now it's you take on that adjacent road. Now that portion of Vanderkar Avenue is not open, right? So in this particular instance, Broughton Street, you know, and the other roads, they're already physically open. There's not a huge area, but we are essentially required to take in the adjacent road right-of-ways when we're considering boundary expansions.
And if we don't take it, guess who's responsible for it? Councillor Sobe.
I'm just wondering, through that road, is there any development that we need to do?
Not immediately. If and when these properties come into the city boundary and a development may, if it is or isn't proposed on that, we would look at that in that instance. It's unlikely that that portion of Vanderkar Avenue would it might be used as a utility corridor, perhaps. I see, because it's only a half road right of way. It's not even a full road right of way. We'd more likely take, and we'd have to look at this in much more detail. You'd more likely take off improved access along Broughton and Johnson. But that portion is already pretty well developed, right? So there wouldn't be a whole lot there. But it would be development driven more so than boundary expansion driven.
Okay. Councillor Paulson.
Seems to me as though this might be time to approach the people that have the properties between there and John Street. I don't know if the developer has approached those properties for sale or not, or it might be interesting to just take in that whole block.
I'm not aware of that, but I do know that if we chose to do that at this point, it would certainly hold up the process.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine.
On the motion then, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. This brings us next to the McLean Mill Society, their monthly report. We have the report dated October 3rd from the Executive Director of McLean Mill, providing an overview of current initiatives as well as financial statements. Do to August 31st, and I see Deanna Baudouin in the audience. Deanna, perhaps there are some things that you really would like to highlight for us? Always. There's your opportunity.
Mayor and councillors, hello, happy October. How did we get here so quickly? As I told you last month, I was really looking forward to giving this report because as of 1 week ago, almost today, we officially made it through our first operating season with the McLean Mill Society, taking the helm and restructuring all the management. And I think we can all have a collective sigh of relief because we did that very, very efficiently. I am so proud of how we handled our budget, as well as moving our initiatives forward. So I am very pleased to share with you some of the great things that we have been up to in a nice linear and quick fashion since we all have a long agenda ahead of us. So as you know, we were dealing with some pretty significant infrastructure issues right across the board, dealing with the old town we call the National Historic Site, as well as the rail trouble that we had. All of these things were not known to us when we took on this project. Having said that, I think that we've done a really good job of starting to restructure and audit every system needed to make this property functional and sustainable. In doing that, we've uncovered areas where we still have a significant amount of work to do, but now we have a plan to do that. And I think that we have a really reasonable way that we can make this property soar. Getting through this operating season, for me, it was a lot of testing the system. I wanted to know really what was here for us. How can we support community initiatives moving forward? How can we utilize this property as a pillar in the community and support other community initiatives? But also, what do we have to work with? So I recognize this season that this is a well-loved property well beyond our community. I was very, very impressed with the demographic that were visiting us for the first time, but also have been repeat customers. And many times I heard when we first came into this project that we were getting one-offs, people were going off to the West Coast. That is really not true. We are a standalone property, and I think if we continue to move on this pace, being really responsible with our finances and checking with community, making sure that we're all on the same page here, this is going to grow bigger than I even originally thought. I think that that's something that we can be really excited about, proud about, and as long as we do this in a sustainable way, planning, maintenance plans, making sure we have infrastructure needs met, covered, we don't jump through things without thinking them through, we're on the right track. One of the ideals that we had beyond the elevated guest experience, which was something that was just phenomenal this year, we wanted to tap into another revenue source. That was one of the ideas. We needed to figure out how to make this property become a bit more viable independently. So we really put a lot of thought and care into bringing this into a new space, which was event space. So we tested out, we had 3 large weddings this season. We held 2 family reunions. We had a grad reunion, which was that was an interesting thing. As you can see, one of the photos from one of our weddings here. These things are a much more viable revenue source than I had anticipated at the beginning of the project. People are looking for a space that is classic, has history and culture attached to it, and is beautiful and outside of town. So another area that we're tapping into now is corporate retreats. When Mr. Deacon here was talking to us about the Seeker Media Group coming to do a workshop with us, this is a Vancouver corporation coming here. They're people that I worked with personally in my own career. This is kind of a big deal to bring these guys into our town. And I really encourage you, just not to go on a tangent here, but this is an opportunity for all frontline staff to get really into the trenches of what we need in terms of media, elevation, and influencers. So share that message out. This is an opportunity and it's very low cost. Something like this would normally run for several $100s just for that one-day workshop, and we're doing it for, what was it, around 30-ish, 35?
23 plus taxes.
There we go. So I encourage business owners, that's the target that should be there. So we wanted to really tap into this. We've got team building events coming. So community groups within our community utilizing this space to come and leave their office environments, have a powwow, We're offering catering now. This is something that we made a slight change this season because we went into this looking at creating an opportunity for food service and ended up opening a cafe. Sometimes things like that happen, apparently. We also recognize that there is room for us to cater, so we decided to take on all catering events within the cafe. Our staff supports this, and we wanted to offer that too as a way to continue our season. So we just finished up first of 4 major fall events last weekend, or the weekend before Thanksgiving. It was called Harvest at McLean Mill. And I was really pleased because we got the opportunity to work with several community groups. We worked with the Gleaning Club, we worked with the Antique Tractor Club. We were doing threshing. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. It's like making it snow it was the very coolest thing. And we had a lot of families come out just to check it out, come and have some lunch. We hope that this is going to be an event that we can expand each year. The next one that we're doing is a long table dinner supported by our staff in our kitchen. And it's going to be on the weekend before Halloween. So I cordially invite all of you to attend. And then we'll be doing another two days of family events. So some haunted houses for the kids using the old town property. So this gives, every single time we do an event out there, we're encouraging history, we're encouraging education, we're encouraging exploration, we're encouraging physical activity. This is a beautiful property, and we're really starting to see its potential now in terms of using it all. Something else that I'm very excited about, and just going to throw this out here because there's a couple gentlemen in this room right now that I think would make pretty fantastic Santa Clauses. Mr. Suve and Mr. Washington, not to throw any names out there. We are going to be supporting the Industrial Heritage Society in their annual Santa Train, but we're also hosting another event which will utilize the entire property. It will be a large-scale Christmas market, handbells, Santa, hay rides, just a really awesome place for families to come and relax in the evening, really bring that joyous festival space. We're working with the Roland Arts Center this fall to put on a market. So they're doing the market. We're just supporting with the venue. This is one of the ways that I think really does make sense for us to have off-season sales. We don't necessarily have to be behind every event, but we have a beautiful space to use and to offer into the community. On that day, we'll be doing Christmas pictures as well for families. So that's something really exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, do you have any questions?
With your event, you mentioned that the weekend before Halloween family event. Is it the entire weekend or just one particular day?
So 27th, 28th, and 29th. The 27th is a Friday. We'll be offering an evening run with our train. As well, that's going to be the long table dinner. It's going to be a murder mystery theme, so kind of fun. I would say that one was more geared for adults. And then Saturday and Sunday, during the later part of the afternoon, because we want it to be a little bit dark, we'll be having a bit of a light up, bonfire, s'mores, storytelling by a lovely storyteller in our community. And then, of course, the cafe will be open. There'll be 3 levels of haunted houses, so one for the itty bitty ones that's not frightening at all, and then all the way up to a more adult haunted house.
Well, that's good because I don't do well with.
Nor do I. That's why we need the itty bitty ones.
But it's it also sounds like if it's later on the 28th, then it won't be in competition with the city's celebrations around our 50th.
Not at all. No. And it's just it's going to be a short evening event. We just wanted to be able to offer. We're testing out everything. This year is a year of testing out what we have in terms of capacity. So
okay,
no.
and just I personally have one last question,
Sure.
and I'm sure other councillors will have questions, but you are showing a net of $120,000, $123,000, I think, at this point. So good for you.
Thank you.
Can you share any of the plans that you might have
Yes.
for that? Are you thinking of infrastructure for that, or presumably putting it back into the mill
Yes.
somehow?
100%, absolutely. I don't want to say too much because we do have some things that we're working on right now, so I'll be able to share at our next meeting. We do have to finish off the campground, so there's a little bit left there. We realize that there's some needs in electrical. we are recognizing this year it's not efficiently run out there. So we want to put in some funds to help us actually have some return. And then we also learned, because we're doing all of these evening events, even the last 2 weddings were in pitch black going out to the platform. Safety issues. So we're going to be addressing those. That's going to be another area. So right now, this month particularly, we're doing all of our audits on the rail system. So something that you maybe didn't know was that we're doing a new database. So everything that had to be restructured on the rail side, to make it more financially feasible, we just started to look at the system from the ground up. We're working very closely with BC Safety Authority. They're coaching us how to make this run in an efficient way. So it's not just infrastructure, it had to be personnel as well. So while doing that audit, we decided let's look out everywhere and see what other little small projects that we can finalize, because this year was a system of looking at where all the gaping holes were, and there was quite a few. So I don't want to be surprised next year with any of these things. So it makes sense to spend a little in areas of infrastructure, going back in. Something I didn't mention, but it is definitely worth mentioning. Dr. Jamie Morton, who is a huge supporter for us, has worked tirelessly to get back our federal grant funding. And we are going to be finishing the mill deck. With him looking for these areas, he's right now putting together he's going to help us find where we need to go next on the Old Town operating side. So that's another area where we have been holding back our spending because we do recognize there's massive infrastructure needs. So it looks really good. I think we were governing our expenses extremely well this year. That's why I was very excited to bring this report to you. I think for October 10th is where we are right now, and having a full season run, we've done well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the report, 3 pages, plus the financials. In the beginning of your report, you were talking about a name change, and just for the people at home, could you take a minute to explain that, please?
Absolutely. So as some of you may have noticed, we have changed the name, not officially, but this is where we're going. Originally, this property was, and legally it still is, the National Historic Site, McLean Mill National Historic Site. Well, while doing our audits through the systems this year, we realized that when we're trying to market this to the wider audience that we are going after, the larger demographic, creating the remarkable experience for our guests, it's not just the National Historic Site that we're marketing. There's other assets there. So we have event space. We have, for instance, we held the Music and Arts Festival, the Shaker, that utilized the entire property. We've got the steam train. We've got our diesel trains. We've got the truck. We've got a historic train station. These things are all part of the package. So in doing this name change, it was allowing us to easier sell the property and the package of the product, if you will. So the National Historic Site is one of the assets of McLean Mill Park. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson?
Now that you've had a full season under your belt, looking forward to next year.
Me too.
I know that you had fits and starts and you got it fired up on June the 9th. What would be your vision for an operating prime time? Is it June 1st through to
it's
end of
actually going to be
October?
April to October.
April, yeah. Okay.
So this year we had originally had that plan for this year, but given all the surprises that came with the rail, that was not an option. So what this is going to look like, we've got weddings booked all year, right around the entire year. We've got winter weddings, spring wedding coming. When we were booking those original weddings, this was before people really I was so impressed that people trusted the property and the project. So that's going to be happening right all along. But starting in April, we're hoping to do an Easter event. And then in May, we've got our Mother's Day event. And then June will be, or I can say it, the Race the Train is coming back. And then a big Father's Day event. Starting mid-June, we'll be operating every weekend, going into August, then the 4 days again. And that might change a little bit. I'm not going to get married to that idea because we may bring back 2 trains a day. We're still toying with what makes sense financially.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions?
Thank you. I love the events focus. Just wondering if you have considered coordinating so that the events are in the active living guide.
That would be fantastic. Actually, I think because we're to a degree a city asset as well, it really makes sense to me and to our board to look at what's going on in the community and not overlap, because we want to be collaborative. We want this to be highlighting the community of the Alberni Valley, not just the McLean Mill, you know? So whatever we can do to bring traffic, and what's that old saying, putting heads in beds, it makes sense to us to extend people's stay and really help highlight the community. So 100%, that's the goal.
Okay.
You didn't see a ton of marketing from us this year. That's part of the spend that you're going to see going here in the fall, is that we really couldn't market when we were changing our brand and we needed to figure it out. So those are all things that need to be done.
That's great. I just noticed there's like a page for the multiplex and a page for Echo. We really could have a page
Definitely.
for McLean Mill as well, because there are a lot of events going on out there, and certainly I think people know about them if they follow the Facebook page, but if not, they may be missing them. So
Yeah, and I think it makes sense too, given that we work with a lot of community events they host on our property. And we're going to continue, and I'd like to see that grow next year as well.
for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Alamani?
Thank you. Great report. You know, it's great to see that it's been successful through the summer. I think the event focus is awesome. You know, seeing the reaction from people online and in the community, I think has been surprising, honestly. People aren't used to seeing the McLean Mill presented in that kind of a way. So I think that's really positive. My question, I guess, is what do you have, because the rail side was so hit and miss this year, what do you see, what's your plan for next year for that sort of aspect of it? Is it going to be the same, you know, weekly or?
Minimally, it will be the same.
Yeah.
That's not my goal though. So we recognize we need to fix our trestles. We're looking for funding right now to address Construxus and Roger. This is an area where I'm spending quite a bit of time, because there are a lot of supporting grants out there. There are a lot of people that will be interested in working with us, I hope. And that's my goal. I'd like to see STEAM happening again. I also recognize that we're not going to do anything to put the operation or the sustainability in jeopardy. So that has to be a smart financial decision. And sometimes there are hard no's. That we've learned that this year. There was a lot of things that we had to hold on to. But with that, the very minimum, we're going to be running 4 days a week. We've been doing great maintenance. I have such a fantastic team of mechanics and people who are working with the assets that we do have. So even if we are using our cute little number 11 for another season, she's ready. So we have that opportunity. But I definitely want to bring STEAM back. That's our ultimate goal. And we're not going to leave one rock uncovered. So the way that we'll do that is sourcing out financial support.
So you mentioned Dr. Morton was looking for funding for the for the mill deck. Is that sort of a possibility then that the mill itself will be operational next year, or
I'm going to say likely that's not something I can totally answer, but next year, given there's a line of necessity, so we have to do what makes sense financially for the community. We know that this is taxpayer fed, but we are working on a project right now that will help us figure out what the maintenance needs for the mill will be. So just the same way that we had to uncover all the source with our rail, it's going to be the same with the mill. So we want to know exactly how much it costs to run the mill. How can we do this in an efficient manner? Is there ways to make this more efficient? And then we also need to look at infrastructure needs, because this is a beautiful asset and we are not willing to let it go to the wayside. It's definitely on our agenda right now. But we also recognize that there are steps to be taken. So whether it happens in 2018 season or 2019 season, you guys will know as it unfolds. We'll keep you in the loop as it's working. But we're going after funding sources that would hopefully support both sides.
If it hadn't have been for your fire crew, we would have lost a big portion, or at least put at danger a big portion of the forest in Cherry Creek area. So thank you for having your crew trained and on top of that.
My pleasure.
Two things come to my mind, and that is the beginning of this season we talked about the significant cost of propane, and you were going to be doing some work discussing with Fortis to see if it was possible to consider bringing natural gas out there. So I'd love to know if anything's come of that. And the second thing was we have an RFP for the train station. I'm just wondering if that is closed now or if it's still ongoing.
So two things. I'll address the Fortis, or switching to natural gas first. That would make a ton of sense for us. At the beginning of the year, I was able to turn off. We have 3 tanks. I turned off 2. I wanted to see what our consumption was per month, and I also wanted to see where the areas of the draw were. That's one of the most expensive things for running that property is the electricity and the propane. So we're on our fall agenda is trying to go after some grant support to actually do the conversion. That makes a lot of sense to our board. I'd love to see that happen in the next 2 years or so. It's hard. We're at the very end of a line and there's not a lot of discussion. So that might be something that we can collaborate on because it would make sense for even the residents in the area. So once that is addressed, I'll let you know how that goes. But it is actually on our current fall agenda. And then second question.
The RFP on the train station.
The RFP is not created yet. So my plan there is I'd like to discuss with the residents in the area. This is our Rotary Arts District. There's a lot of supporting businesses in the area. I want to approach them before we even get started and ask for opinions. What do you want to see? Where do you see this area grow? What's the vision for the property? And then we're going to construct the RFP and put it out. We do know that there's a timeline on it, and we're hoping to bring in 1 or 2 businesses, dependent on what that looks like, that will support recognizing that this is the entrance to the Harbor Key. This is such a prime, awesome location, and one area that I think we've focused so much on getting us up and running that we really just let it sit for another season, and that's really unfortunate. So you're going to see a little more activity and movement in there. I'm hoping to see more people utilizing the space within the community. And then also once we develop our RFP, then hopefully we're going to have some vibrant business people coming in to help bring that corner to life again, in addition to not taking away from the businesses around us.
Okay.
Community conversation.
Councillor McClellan and then Councillor Sobey.
Thank you very much. I didn't make the last meeting, I was out of town, but I appreciate what's happening out there and what you're doing. I just have one question, or 2 questions, I guess. Was it any real problem just using the smaller engine to get people out? Was there a lot of people left behind on days? How did that actually work?
It's got challenges for sure because it decreases our revenue capability. We can only use 3 cars rather than 5. We sold out quite a few days because of that, I think. And because it's a smaller, lighter engine, it's not a workhorse engine. So it does the job, and she's doing really well. The mechanics are doing a good job. But it doesn't allow us to either tap into the educational or the historic aspect of what we actually have for assets. So it definitely makes sense to continue pursuing the path of bringing steam back. But thankfully, we have that beautiful little engine who has done a remarkable job this year. It's also much less expensive to run. So there are pros and cons.
I guess so. And the other question, can you share with council, you're now taking, it seems to me, the last couple of meetings, that you're taking quite an active role in making sure that train operates properly and safely. Can you share with council anything, what your role is there? Or?
Yep. So I have been contracted by our Industrial Heritage Society to help them. We recognize through mid-season that this society is fantastic in their restoration work. They're fantastic in some of the things that they bring to this community here. It made sense for a point person to take over dealing with the management side of the train operations, just because there's a lot of legality, safety issues, and regulatory issues, and nobody in that board of directors was overly keen to pursue that path, if we shall say. So, and it made sense too for one person to oversee the project so we can make sure that everything is being brought up to code, if you will. So that, yeah, I am now.
Okay, Councillor Sauvé?
No, all my questions been answered. Thank you, and
Oh.
great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right, guys.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Councillor McClellan, do you want to make the motion?
That the monthly report and financial statements of the Executive Director of the McLean Mill Society be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Council, that brings us then to our status report. Any questions, Council, on any items of this? Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 17 under Parks, Recreation, and Heritage. We were to develop a draft plan for Canal Waterfront Park. In April, we had the Kiwanis delegation here, and it says on the bottom of the Western Forest has been informed verbally of the plans, but a follow-up letter is to be sent to Western Forest advising of the planned improvements. I just wonder if that letter's been sent yet.
CIO?
Mr. Mayor, an email was sent today to Senior Manager of Western Forest Products advising our progress to date, the fact that there will be a shovel ceremony regarding the gazebo on Saturday, I believe, and outlining that we'll be considering the installation of toilets at that location in 2018.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Council? Councillor McClellan?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just wondering if there's anything further on what we have as a high priority, and I didn't quite open it up here. Here we go. Number 19, the truck route. Something we talked about for as long as I can remember, and we were almost there several years back, and we had a little blipsy. I was wondering if any improvements have come on or if anything's happening.
Okay, CAO?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, so when we last met with Western Forest Products discussing an alternate truck route through Western Forest Products APD lands, they asked us, and rightfully so, they asked us where the data was to demonstrate what the volume of truck traffic was, the nature of the truck traffic, and what we'd done to identify alternate routes other than the route through their property. And it appeared to us, to staff, that we had not done complete work in that area. So we'd undertaken a third-party report around a truck route through APD's property, Western Forest Products property, to address an undefined truck traffic problem on our uptown 3rd Avenue area. So we recognize that before we approach people and talk about building roads on their land, we really need to do our homework and identify what the scope of the problem is, and then identify what potential solutions are for that problem before council makes a decision. So we've undertaken some truck count work, and so that has been done. And Mr. Smith might be able to give you more detail if you like. But essentially, we measured truck traffic through a third party using cameras at key intersections, and that data has been captured, taken away, and they're processing that data right now. So at some point, we'll get a report that tells us what nature of traffic was moving through those intersections at that time. From that truck traffic data, then our next step would be identify potential alternate routes and what each of those alternate routes, the impact it would have on specific truck traffic as measured in our truck count. So we're doing that baseline work, so that when we come back to council with a report and some options and hopefully a recommendation, you'll get to see what the options for alternate routes are and what the impact would be on the truck traffic in the uptown area. And we also measured the Anderson Road area because that was worth capturing as well.
So it says number 21 and 22, a report pending. So is it pending in 2017, or are you able to answer that question?
I'm going to ask the Director of Development Services to help me out with that.
Okay, thank you.
So 21 and 22 are not directly related to the truck project, alternate route. So those came from the Advisory Traffic Committee, where there was a couple intersections that had some concerns, and we were doing traffic counts as some preliminary stuff on that to then look at what alternatives or improvements might be made to those intersections.
Right, okay.
So that's kind of a separate set of projects than from the traffic counts that we were previously discussing. So
Okay, but I thought, I'm sorry, I just made the leap that assuming you were doing traffic counts there, assuming you were going to do traffic counts elsewhere, we'd get it all together as one report, but maybe not.
But those intersections are a little more specific in about, because a lot of those are problems that are currently have some with the pedestrians, especially at Southgate and Gertrude, has been a note, and then some confusion around the traffic at Argyle and Anderson. Might they be part of, or especially the Argyle and Anderson, might be a bigger picture one, potentially. The truck counts were have all been done, including in these intersections as well. We're still waiting for the report documentation to come back for us. But there'll be somewhat two different ones. We'll look at the truck alternate routes somewhat separately from these intersections, but they'll all need to come forward to council prior to any action being taken.
Okay, any date that we'll have this revealed, or do you anticipate this calendar year?
For some of, certainly to continue to work on the background, whether we'll have a conclusion brought to you or not, I can't tell you that. But if we want to do a capital project in 2018, then we're definitely going to have to bring something forward for the budget for council to consider.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. If it's going to have an impact on 2018 budget, we're going to need this information. So, okay, Councillor Alemany?
Just assuming that's the end for that item, because I'm going to a different item.
It is
Yeah.
with traffic
Okay.
counts, but it's certainly not with the status report. He almost got away.
Number 29 and 30, which is the secondary suite bylaw. And since you're there and we were talking about it today already, the AeroView, just what your take is on next steps for the AeroView property.
Council has not changed direction to staff at this stage, so I will continue to work to be bringing a report to council on remedial action for that property. Now that includes fixing the building, bringing that, getting a coordinating architect professional and various engineers involved to bring that building up to building code. That is certainly an option that will be available to the owner. It always has been, to the current owner or future owner. So unless council changes direction to staff on that, then that is something that I would hope to bring forward in relatively short order on the AeroView.
So remedial action doesn't have to mean taking it down.
It does not necessarily require it to be demolished. It's a concern through the community charter. The council has noted that there's a concern with this building, and we want the owner to try and do something about it. That includes fixing it, but up to the current building code.
Do we need to look at that date? That's almost like a deadline up there.
If the property does change hands in a very short period of time, the date may have to alter somewhat. Yeah. So I'll be keeping close tabs on that property and does the new owner the new owner take ownership in a very short period of time, which he indicated was the case. But because we need to deal with the property owner, right? So.
And on the secondary suite bylaw, any movement on that at all?
I have not made any significant movement on that lately. The development applications are taking up a good majority of my time currently.
That's a good thing.
I think so.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions for you, and it's about nuisance buildings. I'm wondering, how do we declare a building to be a nuisance building? what opportunities might be created if we should declare a building to be a nuisance building. And then I'm, depending upon the answer to those two questions, we could explore where we go from there.
So the city does have what's called a nuisance abatement bylaw. And that bylaw where council can, through somewhat of a process, declare a property a nuisance property based on, so that would require council asking for essentially a staff report on a particular piece of property, if you have one in mind. We would do some of our due diligence in regards to bylaw calls, RCMP calls, fire department calls, works calls, that kind of thing, and saying, okay, what's the history on this property? Is it, meeting a standard? We'd bring that information to council. We are required to provide the property owner the ability to be heard by council.
So then, council, I would propose that we declare the Carlson Building as a nuisance building.
Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
You can't actually declare the property a
Oh,
nuisance.
sorry.
You need to direct staff
I
to bring
declare
a
that
report.
we direct staff to explore what the opportunities are with respect to the Carlson Building.
And I'll second that.
Okay, and you're
been
seconding
seconded.
it? All those in favor?
Do we have a motion on the floor for status report?
No, not yet. This is just related to this one. No. Okay, so there you go. We're past.
Just like that.
No, so
You wanted to
staff-
know if we could give you some direction, so we're giving you some
Yes.
direction. Explore away with respect to that.
So we'll need to bring a report back to council with some history on that, and we would at the same time be informing the owner of the land that that's the intention, that will come forward to council, and that they will inform them in writing that they will have an opportunity to speak to council. Because, just for council's information, if after we go through that process, and if council then determines that they wish to declare it a nuisance property, and we've gone through that, any future activity where the RCMP go, bylaw enforcement goes, fire, we would then bill that property owner at a prescribed rate in the bylaw for any future calls.
Great. Okay. Councillor Alberni.
Thank you. This is sort of turning into the Advisory Planning Commission report that we do, but anyway, the public should come out to the Advisory Planning Commission meetings because they're very informative for these kind of properties. But on the topic of nuisance buildings, the 3rd Avenue corner building, Uncle Argyle's, it's all tarped up. I've had a couple people this week just wondering, what's happening with that building.
It's under an active building permit, and in some cases where you have an older building, as you get into it, you find things that were unanticipated, and that has happened on several items that they're going along, they have a plan, they start doing something, and then they go, oh, and now so it's taking longer than they had anticipated to do the work, but it's under an active building permit being properly supervised by our building inspector. And of course the tarps, this time of year you need to protect the good work that they're trying to do from the weather, because they've had to expose it way more than they had anticipated.
I think they got the roof on it last week, I saw it.
Yeah. So they're doing a complete, it's turned into, start off with this size of a project, and it's turning into a complete renovation of that building. I think it'll be a very good thing once it's done, but in the short term, yeah, it's gonna need to be tarped for a while.
Sounds like the Mackenzie interchange in Victoria, but we'll get there.
That will probably take longer.
It probably is. Okay, thank you. Now I have a couple questions for the CAO. First one is number 1 CAO, and that is with the truck tenders. And I'm just wondering if we are still satisfied with 2, or if there's any issue related to that. And the other one is 345. Just wondering, I don't recall council directing that it be a consideration of the Reconciliation Committee for those, the MOUs. And I'm just kind of wondering what the thinking was for those.
Mr. Mayor, on number one, the tender has closed on the garbage trucks, so we have prices in hand. Staff are working on a report for council's consideration. As far as the number of trucks, we told you in budget that we were anticipating 2 trucks. We currently run 3 garbage trucks, so staff are putting their minds to how many trucks do we need to have to run organics and a garbage program. So we'll bring a comprehensive report for council's consideration as soon as possible. On 3, 4, and 5, those are all to do with, 2 of them are memorandum of understanding between the city and First Nations. And the third is a report regarding the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's specific calls to action. All 3 of those say, in terms of next action, consideration of Reconciliation Committee, it's not intended by that direction that we would put those in front of the Reconciliation Committee for consideration. What that means is that we're about to embark on this committee work of our Reconciliation Committee, and that committee is the mandate is to make recommendations to council on potential actions that the city could undertake toward reconciliation. So it may possibly be that they'll make recommendations that touch on those 3 topics. So my recommendation is that on these 3 topics, we stand still until council's received the report from the Reconciliation Committee, because they may make recommendations that overlap or align with those. So it doesn't mean we're going to ask that committee to look at those, but we're going to stand still and see if they choose to make recommendations in that area.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, I think I understand. It's not for them to review it, to pass judgment on. It's just to take in as part of their whole information.
That's correct. And if council would like, we can change the wording on that so it's more clear.
I think I understand now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, council? Then, Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of the status report?
That the current status report be received. Second.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. And managers' monthly reports, we have one, and it's on Planning and Building Department. Any significant items you want to highlight for us, Mr. Smith?
No, Mr. Mayor, other than, as you can see, activity still remains strong. Building permits are ahead of where we were last year, and that was a pretty good last year as well, but I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
And lots of rezoning applications. I can see signs out in various places around town.
Yep.
So there's some of them we haven't dealt with yet as a city.
No, there's several that are still just getting started that will have to come forward.
Okay, Councillor Alberni, do you want to make the motion, please?
Move receipt of the planner's report.
So that'd be the monthly report from the Director of Development Services. All in favor?
We caught you now.
Carried. Thank you. And council, then that brings us to bylaws. Again, from the Director of Development Services, Advisory Planning Commission. We have a summary report of the September 21st meeting of the Advisory Planning Commission. It's provided for consideration. So we're on to these development applications. First item, Councillor Alberni.
That the summary report of the September 21st, 2017 meeting of the Advisory Planning Commission be received and all recommendations be accepted.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Carry on, Councillor Alberni, please.
That zoning bylaw amendment number 26, 2549 16th Avenue, Bradbury, bylaw number 4950 be now introduced and read a first time.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried.
That zoning bylaw amendment number 26, 2549 16th Avenue, Bradbury, bylaw number 4950 be read a second time.
And I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Carry on, please.
That zoning bylaw amendment number 26, 2549 16th Avenue, Bradbury, bylaw number 4950 be advanced to a public hearing on November 14th, 2017 at 6:15 p.m. in the City Hall Council Chambers.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. And then we have from the Director of Development Services a Development Cost Charges Reduction Bylaw, number 4947. We have his report dated October 3rd, 2017. Mr. Smith, I'm wondering if you could explain for us, for council, and for the public, who I'm sure lots are listening, just some of the highlights of this report that you've prepared, please.
Certainly. So this bylaw, if passed by council, would potentially give a reduction of 50% to our development cost charges for projects that are not-for-profit rental housing or supportive living housing. And there are some criteria that go along with that. At council's request or direction previously, there's a bit of an explanation of what supportive housing would supportive living would mean, and that's essentially housing that provides on-site supports and services to residents who can't live independently. And I guess a common example would be an extended care home. That would be a clear example of what supportive living would be. Council would also ask to have some sort of criteria around what affordable housing would mean for the city of Port Alberni. And I have to admit that this took me quite some time to try and think of something that could work, be meaningful, to ensure that people who need affordable housing would be eligible for this. And essentially what has come up with is BC Housing creates and publishes what's called a housing income limits, and they do them for most cities throughout the province, including Port Alberni. And that determines an income level required to pay for the average market rent for suitable sized units, and they go everything from bachelor suites to 2 and 3 bedroom units. So that's what we are choosing to use as a point for, and at least 50% of the rental units would need to fall under this category, and we would implement this through a housing agreement that would be registered on title. So that's what's proposed in the bylaw in around that. And I'd be again pleased to try and answer any questions.
Thank you for that, and thank you for those definitions. I find them quite helpful. Question though, and this is just, sorry, you don't need to be absolutely spot on with it, but let's suppose it's a $5 million development. What would be the reduction in developmental cost charges on a $5 million development, more or less? Are we talking $10,000? Are we talking $50,000?
So it's not, for those times, it's not based on the value of the construction. It's based on the number of units that are provided.
Okay.
And if
well, let's suppose it was 25 units.
So we previously looked at this in reports that went to council, and of course I didn't bring that portion with me. So I'm going to go by memory, and I think on the 20 unit extended care home that Rainbow Gardens was proposing, I think the DCC charges were in the range of $90,000. And so therefore it would be a $45,000 reduction.
Okay, thank you very much. That's what I was hoping to hear. Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At UBCM, Councillor Alberni and I had a very good discussion with the mayor of
Quinnell.
Thank you, Quinnell. He knew what I was thinking.
Bob Simpson.
Thank you. And Quinnell has done some very interesting work with their DCC reduction bylaw around encouraging supportive housing and different projects in specific areas. And they've zoned, and I know we've opened up our commercial revitalization bylaw to the whole community, but they have very strategically considered where they'd like their housing developments to be. And they've used that as a part of the criteria for, you know, if you build here, where the services are already central anyways, and our DCC, our actual costs are going to be lower, you're going to get a higher percentage reduction than if you build low-cost housing out here, which is not really the core of where we want it. And I'm wondering if do we have areas in our OCP where we have strategically thought about trying to focus developments like this? It was interesting just because of the timing to have that conversation with him. And he said, at first we just said, put it anywhere. And then we started thinking, no, we need to say where we want to put it. And different types of developments are better suited in different areas. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
So our current OCP has general direction around that, and you will see it sometimes in my staff reports where the OCP supports infill and redevelopment of sites, and I'll make note of that often when we're doing these small lot rezones or those types of things. There's no really directiveness on that, so we haven't gone and done that level of in-depth analysis to say these are the city's preferred location for high-density residential development or for seniors housing. We have not gone and done that, whether either in the OCP or certainly from a DCC incentive program. So we haven't done that. We have not done that work.
So,
not that we couldn't, but
yeah.
we haven't at this stage.
So if we were to pass this bylaw, we could potentially come back to that down the road. Or would you recommend that we just are at a point where we would need to fully review the OCP and that part of the process?
Of course, it would always be at council's direction, but my preliminary thoughts is that I think we would want to take a bigger picture look at the official community plan, because that could then support revisions to a DCC reduction bylaw or any other tax revitalization bylaw or those kinds of things that council wants to specifically look at. But instead of just looking at something like that, I think you need to take a look at the whole community and its land use goals, and where do you want to specifically direct, does council want to specifically direct certain types of land uses in some areas, and what is the community prepared to encourage that, perhaps? So that's very preliminary thoughts. I think you'd probably want to think about doing that, because you need to have, if you're going to do that, you should have a pretty strong public discussion about it. And the official community plan and a larger visioning of the community is probably a good starting point for that, because you shouldn't be making decisions like that in little pockets. In my mind, you need to have a very thorough discussion with the public, with council, with stakeholder groups. There's a whole variety of things that you ideally would bring to bear to see, okay, where does the community really want to go? Where do we see the density? Do we want to encourage? Are we still okay? What level of sustainability might you want to bring into it? There's a variety of factors that you might want to consider.
Great, thank you very much.
Sounds like a future amendment.
But on the other hand, we wouldn't want to hold up some projects that are almost ready to go. Or maybe in the near future. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Council? So then, Councillor Paulson, would you like to make those motions? There's one and then 3 more.
That the report from the Director of Development Services dated October 3rd, 2017 be received.
Seconder?
Second.
All those in favor? Carried.
That the Development Cost Charges Reduction bylaw number 4947, be now introduced and read a first time.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried.
The Development Cost Charges Reduction bylaw number 4947, be read a second time.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor?
That Development Cost Charges Reduction bylaw number 4947, be read a third time.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And one last item before we go to recess, five-year financial plan, 2017-2021, amendment number 2, bylaw number 49. Councillor Sauvé, are you able to make that motion?
That the five-year financial plan, bylaw 2017 to 2021, amendment number 2, bylaw number 4949, be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and with the corporate seal and numbered 4949.
Your seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to declare a recess until 8:45. To order. Okay, council, it brings us to correspondence for action, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 4 is a late item that's added. First item, council is on the Grandview Road walkway, and if you recall, last budget year we were presented with this opportunity to consider this, and we have had some correspondence from some of the residents on Otter Place related to the Grandview Road walkway. It's a matter, they consider it as a matter of public safety. Would like us to reconsider that. So, Councillor Washington, I'm wondering if you could make that motion, please, related to these.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the letter dated September 17, 2017 from Sylvia Erg, email dated September 23 from Todd Patton, and email dated September 19th from Danielle Ely, requesting the construction of a walking path along Grandview Road from Otter Place to Compton Road be received and forwarded to 2018-2022 5-year financial plan budget for consideration.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that these concerns are, I mean, they sound like very valid concerns. My concern, I think, with forwarding it to next year's budget is that my concerns are going to be the same as they were at this year's budget. I'm sure Granville Road needs a sidewalk. I recognize the names of the people bringing the concerns forward. I'd love to give them a sidewalk. But I think that there's lots of roads that are busy walking roads in our community that also need sidewalks. My road needs a sidewalk. There's a lot of roads that are busy places that need sidewalks. And I don't think that deciding on the basis of who's complaining or, you know, bringing forward their concerns when there are probably lots of community members that just don't know the process to bring forward their concerns, it doesn't feel like a responsible way to make decisions. So certainly we can bring it forward again to budget next year, but I know I won't support it again unless we get to the point where we have an actual process for assessing the concerns when they come forward. Maybe we should have a master plan in place of when our sidewalks need to be replaced, when neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks should get sidewalks. I think just deciding on a one-off basis is going to create an environment where if people just keep writing letters, we're going to build them sidewalks, and that might not be in the community's best interest long term.
Thank you, but you'll notice that in the motion it says a walking path, not a sidewalk.
I think
there is a difference.
Okay.
There's quite a difference in terms of cost.
Sure. I guess in general my concern is the same though.
No, I totally get it. Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would not a sidewalk in front of your house affect your taxes? I mean, you've got your frontage and stuff like that. I've never had a sidewalk in front of my house, so, but does that not?
I honestly, neither have I, so I don't really know.
Do you pay for, is there something in your taxes that say your taxes are going to go up if you get a sidewalk in front of your house?
I don't think so, but CAO?
I don't pay any more for my sidewalk. I mean, yours. And I'm one of the only blocks that has a boulevard too.
Okay, CAO?
Mr. Mayor, residential property taxes are based on assessed value. And if a sidewalk raised the value of a property, then you could argue that it raised the taxes. it's based on assessed value.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClement?
Yeah, the street that I live on, it got all fixed up because the people asked for it, and there was a 20-year or whatever tax put on our property, but I think it's just coming off. And I'm wondering, and I haven't heard of that happening lately, but it used to be quite common. If someone really feels they wish something, is there some way that we can help them get it that way where it is a local improvement?
Could be part of the budget discussion as well. I don't think we need to solve that problem tonight, but. Yeah. Councillor Alemany?
I agree with sort of what's been said. I think there's an opportunity when these things come forward to, you know, assess where we are in a grander plan, and we don't have that kind of plan at this point. There's a, you know, we could just create a walking path or create a sidewalk, but I think we need to actually look at our roadways and our right-of-ways, and there's something called complete streets that we could, you know, with something like a local improvement tax, actually create streets that don't just have a sidewalk, but maybe they have a boulevard, maybe they have a bike lane, maybe they have, you know, whatever is a modern roadway. You know, I think this is good to respond to people's requests, but I do think that there's an opportunity here that we need to look a little broader.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sobe?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to council that the city already has a plan when it comes to, and I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Alemany, for streets, which includes sidewalks and so forth, as into the aging and what's next, and they have a priority list. I would hate to divert from what we already have in place with the city. Again, this is not a sidewalk, it's a pathway. It's in need in that area. I would support it, but again, I do understand where Councillor Minion's come from, where it'd be nice to have a process within the city to see what is the need. I don't mind bringing this to the next budget, because if there's a need for a pathway for security reasons and safety reasons, I'm all for it. But the thing is, it'd be nice to have a process within our staff as into certain requirements have to be met before it comes into proposal for the next year's budget, or even when it comes proposal to council. And when it passes that process, then it'd be nice to have it in council. I know this area. I had a walk there during the weekend, and I could see the need. I guess you really have to attend the location to see the need for that neighborhood, and then there is a need. So I would be supporting this, but again, it's just to bring it to next year's budget, and we can make that decision then. Thank you.
Okay. Lots of opportunity to address that. On the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Council, next item from Roland Smith. We have a letter dated October 3rd requesting clarification of the ownership of the Alberni Pacific Railway. Councillor Minions, are you prepared to make that motion?
That the letter dated October 3rd, 2017, requesting clarification of the ownership of the Alberni Pacific Railway be received and referred to the CAO for response.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Carried. And council, we have from Dr. Paul Hasselback, the Medical Health Officer for Island Health. We have a letter dated September 25th providing recommendations for local governments to improve air quality in their region. Councillor Alemany, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, that the letter dated September 25th, 2017, suggesting ways for local governments to improve air quality in their region be received, referred to the Air Quality Council for information, and staff directed to respond to Dr. Hasselback, confirming initiatives adopted by council. And I'd love to speak to it afterwards if I could.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Alemany.
So this is, I think, an opportunity to toot our own horn, as it were. The Air Quality Council in the city of Port Alberni have done all of the things that Dr. Hasselbeck kind of points out here. Bylaws for improving air quality, supporting our wood alternatives, marketing and educational campaigns, and restrictions of backyard burning. So, this is I think a really positive thing for our community. It shows that we're hopefully leading the way on the island, and we're seeing that. I saw that as well at the UBCM in discussion with the Ministry of Environment about open burning regulations. There, they recognize what's happening here, and that we're trying to set a good example. So,
and you'll notice he puts in there that there's one community that has met all of this. He doesn't name the community, but
it's us.
Clearly, it's us. Okay, thank you. So it's good, Council, that we've done all this good work, but you'll also notice that in terms of the PM 2.5, there are two communities that are highlighted in red, and it's the Alberni Valley and Comox. And so we influence what happens in our city, but we can't impact what happens outside of the city. Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, I noticed that Comox Valley and the Alberni Valley were higher than the others, but really, you look at those numbers, they're pretty darn low for the rest of the world. When I get pictures on my cell phone of 625 of them instead of 20, I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. No proclamations, and I'm sorry, number 4. Thank you. I did forget it. We have a late item from Councillor Alberni.
Yeah, so along the same lines, I was approached by a group at VIU, Vancouver Island University, the Applied Environmental Research Laboratories. So this is a group that's been doing leading edge research on air quality indicators, so all sorts of pollutants in the air. It's happening at VIU, and they're looking for support in their research. They're doing a PhD research effort in the next year. They've kitted out. I got to see today a new van that they have with literally $1 million worth of equipment in it, able to detect ozone and particulate and volatile organic compounds, tons of different stuff, and be able to drive around and map it all. So what they're looking for, and the reason I brought it up as a late item, is they're trying to put together their funding application, and they're actually looking for support just to consider the city or ACRD funding up to $7,000 for that work. The funding would be matched by, I believe, VIU and the federal government. So this isn't from the city budget per se. It's actually probably more appropriate to go through the ACRD, just in our discussions today. So I would hope that council could hopefully support bringing this to the ACRD tomorrow, and ask for that, because their deadline is on Monday of next week. So unfortunately, it's quite rushed, but it looks like a really exciting project. And given our kind of recent issues around what's that smell down at the mill, or what are the organic compounds coming out of canned timber, or where wood stove emissions in the community or around the valley. These are all things that they're specifically doing research on, and that they could feed back into our work at the Air Quality Council when we're doing an airshed management plan. So it could be really good, and I would just ask that you support us bringing this to the ACRD tomorrow to support that funding.
Okay, so is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, is there a seconder for the motion?
Second.
Okay, certainly, Councillor Alberni, I have no problem bringing this forward to the ACRD tomorrow. I can't speak for Councillor McClellan, but I have no problem personally bringing it. Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, I guess the question I've got, we got this letter today, and they need it Monday. Did they not know that they were going to apply in the last 2 or 3 months, or is this something that just dropped out of the sky?
I think they're I don't know the specifics of the program, but it sounds like it came together very quickly over the summer, and they contacted me during UBCM, so we weren't able to get together until today. So unfortunately, it was just the way. And then with the Air Quality Council not meeting until November, and being without a coordinator, it's kind of all a little messed up, but not all their fault, not all our fault. So.
Okay, then in that case, on the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, I think that finishes the H's. And then council, that brings us to informational correspondence. City Clerk, would you like to review that for us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few items. A letter from the RCMP providing expenditures to August 31st. 2 emails from Gary Lajeunesse expressing concern regarding air quality in the Alberni Valley. The Bread of Life advises of their annual harvest dinner and silent auction on Saturday, November 18th at their Bread of Life Centre, and the tickets are $25 each. Councillor Sauvé provided a copy of the Office of the Seniors Advocate Residential Care Survey provincial results. Vancouver Island Regional Library has provided their financial plan 2018 to 2022, noting an average increase of 3.98% or a per capita increase of $1.19. Minutes from the Museum and Heritage Commission for the meetings that they've held throughout this year. As well, minutes from the Food Security and Climate Disruption Committee, also from the Seniors Advisory Committee, Union of British Columbia Municipalities Convention. Councillor Alberni has provided his report of his attendance. Minister of Children and Family Development recognizes October as Foster Family Month and encourages local governments to recognize and celebrate the month wherever possible. BC Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy provides a copy of the 2014 to 2016 Georgia Strait Air Zone Report, noting the ministry will continue to work with the city to address local air quality issues.
Okay, council, anybody wish to pull anything out from here? I'll notice, council, that there is a 3.98% per capita increase of $1.19, which for the Vancouver Island Regional Library, which maybe seems pretty minimal, but on the other hand, we are paying them, for us, that's an increase of $45,000 collectively as a city. So it's not completely insignificant. $45,000 is still $45,000. And we just have to be really cognizant of the increased cost in that, and how the degree to which we have input into the decisions that are made around Vancouver Island Regional Library spending. Anything else, Council? Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 2, Mr. Lajeunesse was talking about the catalyst mill and describing what they were burning in their boilers and stuff. Is there any way we can get a report to see if what he's saying is true, or do we have no jurisdiction there? I don't imagine, but I just.
Well, first off, you're right, we don't have the direct jurisdiction, but they do have to meet environmental expectations. But that's not to say we couldn't ask.
I would just like the way he talks about it, I would like to see if what he says is true, or if it's getting fabricated or out of hand, and because that kind of stuff spreads faster than the other. So just if we could check into it.
Yeah, the facts of it, I'm sure we can do that. Just get city staff to check.
Yeah, he had the tour.
Councillor Alberni, then Councillor Sauvé.
I won't pretend to speak for Catalyst, but I think a really good resource that we could point Mr. Lajeunesse to would be just to attend the Air Quality Council meeting, which Catalyst is at and has a representative at. They're public meetings. There's a ton of information there, and I'm sure he would be welcome there, and he'd be able to talk to Catalyst directly through that kind of a forum. So. That's what I would suggest anyway.
Okay. Maybe we can get that message to Mr. Lajeunesse. Councillor Sauvé?
Yeah, I was just going to echo the same sentiments as Councillor Alberni. The thing is, Catalyst has always been open as into their operations. They give tours and so forth, and as far as I know, they've been meeting requirements from the provincial government. But again, they are in the committee, and they're very open to any discussion about the operations of what they burn there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Council? Then, Councillor McClellan, do you want to move receipt of this?
I move we receive and file the letters for information.
Okay, seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council, there is no report from in camera. So that brings us to council reports. The first one is Mayor's report. And the first item, Council, that I want to bring to your attention or to share with you is that the Port Authority has now been invited as a result of a submission that they made under the National Trade Corridors Fund, and their submission has been accepted by Transport Canada, they have been invited to put together a more complete submission due by November 6th for $500 million worth of funding for the transshipment hub. So this is a huge next step for us as a community. And it's going to involve a lot of work over a relatively short period of time. That's really only about 3 weeks' time. But the implications for us as a community, should it be accepted, would be that the federal government would kick in its 20% share of the total cost of this project, which is a major infrastructure project of approximately $1.7 billion. Transformative not just for our community, but transformative for our island, and has a huge potential impact on the economy of British Columbia and the economy of Canada. So when you look at the requirements on this, for this National Trade Corridors Fund, this particular project ticks off really well most of the boxes on it. Needless to say, it's in partnership with the Hoyt First Nation. The other 80% of the funding would, at this point, come from international sources, because it is a very, very large amount of money, and it's something that the city has been supporting the Port Authority on for a number of years, and we've been working particularly hard on it the last 2.5 years, and we're finally getting to the point where we're able to make this announcement. So it is a big deal for us. So we just wanted to share that with council, that we are moving ahead, and it's going to be a very busy time. The next thing, council, tomorrow, October the 11th at 10:15, is the dedication of the walkway, the sidewalk, and additional parking on Compton Road in front of A.W. Neal School. It's now been completed, and so 10:15 tomorrow morning, if any of you are able to make it, it's there as a result of our decision as a council earlier this year during the budget process, and it's a good time to dedicate it, and there will be students there as well as PAC and some of our city staff as well. Next thing is that I wanted to read something to you, and it's It's from some visitors who got married in Port Alberni this summer. It's dear Mayor Rattan and members of the chamber. My husband now and I came to Port Alberni for a vacation, wedding, and honeymoon. We truly fell in love with your beautiful city. This was my first international trip, and your town exceeded my expectations. From the beautiful scenery, the wonderful people, and the spirit of Port Alberni made our wedding vacation spectacular. Special thanks to Cedarwood Lodge Bed and Breakfast Inn for the wonderful accommodation, United Taxi Services for all of our transport, Quality Foods for our beautiful wedding cake, Twin City Brewery for our wonderful wedding dinner, Colines Nursery for our flowers, Erica Watson of Sterling Images Photography, and last but certainly not least, Sprout Lake Provincial Park. Our wedding location was absolute perfection. We enjoyed the pace of life versus the rush of Los Angeles, the people and sense of community. This place felt like what home should be. And whoever called Port Alberni the worst place to live in Canada clearly has never been there or doesn't know what they're talking about. We would move here in a heartbeat. Thank you again to the residents, proprietors, and community of Port Alberni, British Columbia, Canada. We enjoyed and loved our time there and can't wait to visit again. John and Erica Thune from Los Angeles, California, and I'll pass around the picture. Next item, Council last Friday had an opportunity for a bit of a photo op at the plywood site, and it was to show the beginnings of the geotech work on that site, just to prove up for Canadian Maritime Engineering as to exactly where the building is the best location for the 18,000 square foot building that they're proposing on that site. It's a fabrication building. There'll be another opportunity at the beginning of November to more specifically find out exactly what goes into that building, what it looks like, what some of the dimensions are, and what some of the uses are for that site. So that'll be at the beginning of November. October the 2nd, Council, I met with Minister Donaldson to discuss fiber and remanufacturing opportunities here in the Alberni Valley. Seems like Minister Donaldson and I are becoming good friends. We've met now 3 times in the last short while, and one more to come. September 30th, I attended the 60th anniversary dinner and fundraiser for PACL, the Port Alberni Community Living. It was a great event, great food. Probably overate, but it was a great time. Lots of good people, and they're a wonderful organization in our community. And of course, like most of the rest of council, I was at UBCM from September 25th to 29th. And council, that's my report. I move acceptance of my report.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Councillor McClellan, do we have a regional district report?
No report, Mr. Mayor. The difference in meetings last month and when we advanced ours and they canceled one or whatever, we've reported on the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. So next council meeting we'll have one. And then that brings us to councillors' reports, and we'll start with Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. September 21st, Salmon Festival had their debrief. I took 4 pages of notes, so we'll remember what we're going to do next spring. But general consensus is we all did very well. So looking forward to getting together with the Port Authority to firm up some maybe some electrical plugs and a few drains, so that we will try and get a little more professional down there. 28th, I spoke at the Rotary Luncheon. They wanted a bit of history on the Port Alberni Salmon Festival, so I did the best I could, since I've only been here since 1983, but I quizzed a few of the elders in the club and managed to put together a story. So they were quite impressed with it, and so impressed that I got published in What's Up Port Alberni. So story's in there if you want to read it. October 4th, Heritage Commission meeting. Quite a few things happening this fall in the Alberni Valley. Like the mayor said, October 28th, the 50th amalgamation at Echo Centre. October 29th, Film Fest at the British Comedy The Finest. And on November 16th, the Homefront exhibit reopens. That's our World War II Japan and the effect it had on BC during World War II. November 10th, 11th, and 12th, the train station will be hosting the craft fair. And Industrial Heritage Society starts their Santa train runs December 2nd and 3rd. And our friend Bill Collette was at the meeting, and he's looking for volunteers to help light up the mill for Christmas. So if you got some ideas or got some lights or got a group together that can light up a building, get a hold of Bill Collette up at the chamber for details. And that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's lots to report, of course, from UBCM, but I'll focus on what we sort of did as far as the Food Security Climate Change or Climate Disruption Committee is concerned, because I had that meeting last week as well. We had some really great meetings with the Minister of Environment, ministry staff from the Ministry of Forests, all around sea level rise and the Somas river flooding. So hopefully with the outcome that they will be coming back to the community, either ministry staff or otherwise, and convening a kind of a broad process to be able to move forward on that. So that was a really good aspect of UBCM for me, and I think for the city. Just to get that out there. And along the same lines, I brought forward the open burning smoke control regulations on a number of occasions with ministers. I talked with Minister of Environment, Minister of Forest, and Minister of Jobs and Innovation on that topic. They were all very open to it. The Minister of Environment sounded as though they will be bringing forward those regulations before the end of the year, which is really positive to hear. And the Minister of Jobs and Innovation was very interested in the aspects around using fiber in our forests in a more innovative kind of way, and talked a little bit about grant opportunities and opportunities around there. So that was kind of my biggest focus at UBCM. It seemed to work out pretty well. Of course, if the public wants to see more of what was going on there, the link is in today's agenda to my blog. That has the full report there, but I'll leave it at that for that.
Thank you for doing that. Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was at UBCM as well. Some very good takeaways. Really interesting what a lot of communities are doing. I think I'll speak more to that next time. I'm going to use my council report to ask a question, because we don't actually have any specific requirements around what our council reports are supposed to be for. So I'm just wondering if we have some kind of process around answering questions from people in the public that are written in letters. And I'm specifically talking about Mr. Smith's letter, because he did give it to us before, quite early. It feels a bit like we're putting off an uncomfortable subject. And I know a lot of the concerns brought forward in his letter are definitely concerns of mine as well. I know in the past we've had questions or we've had a report back the same agenda. It feels like when somebody comes and sits 2 hours through a council meeting, they're expecting to hopefully get some answers. And I don't think it doesn't feel acceptable to put that off another 2 weeks to give those answers. So I'm just curious, do we have a process around that? Is it normal for us to wait 2 weeks? Or is it reasonable to expect that we could have provided some answers tonight?
Actually, when we CEO, do you want to wait now or till the end of the council reports?
I can answer now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I know you're ready.
And I can tell you on that one specifically, I believe we received it near the end of the day or the afternoon of Tuesday last week. And the agenda cutoff is Wednesday, end of day Wednesday. So we actually considered trying to put a report together in response to have in this in this agenda package and made the decision, I made the decision that we weren't able to do that in a thorough manner. So we put off responding until we're able to respond in a thorough manner. But I'd ask the city clerk if the city has a process or a practice that we follow in terms of reporting in a general way. So I answered the specific question, but is there a general approach?
Well, typically, Mr. Mayor, when people write to council with questions, the letter would come before council, and if we, as the CAO has mentioned, if we have time to put a report together to go with it, we would do that. In this case, it's clearly, it's an ongoing issue. There's a lot of detailed questions that do take some time, not just from city staff, but I think in this particular instance from the McLean Mill Society. But in general, I think if we have something that comes forward, we try and anticipate, what response might be required and bring that at the same time. And sometimes it works that way, sometimes it doesn't.
But the CAO is preparing a report and a response, and we'll share it with council once it's ready. I think it's almost ready now.
So will that be sent back to Mr. Smith before our next agenda, or will we all wait until our next agenda?
Mr. Mayor, the direction from council to respond to those questions, the response belongs to council in my mind. So we will, when the report is ready, it'll go on the next available council agenda. And what our practice has been is when the agenda goes public on a Thursday, near the end of the day Thursday, I've reached out to Mr. Smith when he's written letters and said, hey, by the way, council package is out, that sort of thing. So given a heads up. We don't do that with all letter writers, but certainly Mr. Smith writes letters often, and I've told council before and expressed publicly that I feel his input is valuable and holds us accountable. It's good. There's no flies on Mr. Smith. He's intelligent and he pays attention to details. And if I respond on behalf of the city with a report that's not thorough or contradictory to previous reports or not factual, he's going to point that out. And then we're going to have a conversation about why our report was lacking. So when we respond, I want that to be thorough and accurate. And it's going to take some time. And we may send we're talking about a report in response to an 8-page letter that has some very pointed comments in this. So if anybody's not read that letter, they should read it start to finish. There's some pointed comments in that letter that we may take a legal opinion on. So my response report may not be ready for the October 23rd meeting, depending on how long it takes to get a legal opinion on some of those points.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think my concern is mainly around some of the comments going around on social media. Sometimes if we let concerns go on unaddressed from some level of authority, rumors spread that may or may not be true, and we have no idea. And I mean, I personally have no idea about a lot of the comments made. So anyways, thank you. I understand the difficulty in responding. It's just, yeah, I'm worried that, things take on a life of their own. And I also really feel a response is needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson.
I, as well, attended UBCM from the 25th to the 29th, and I did submit a report, which I would ask to be put into informational correspondence for the next agenda. Actually, one session I went to a round table, and actually the Minister of Highways, Transportation and Highways was there, and I actually got a chance to get up and take the microphone, and I guess probably a good way of putting it was I addressed several issues around Highway 4, funding that's been put towards Highway 4 for the next little while for improvements. The previous government had those fundings placed for 5 to 10 years, and I made it very clear to them that that wasn't good enough, that funding needs to be accessed and put into improvements on that highway. And I also got a chance to discuss a little bit about Cathedral Grove, and Cathedral Grove is not going to go away. It's continuing, it's getting larger, it's getting more congested each and every year. So that was kind of one of the highlights for me. I got to stand there face to face with them with a microphone in my face. I've never met a microphone that I don't love. October 2nd and 3rd, I went to the BCHL League meeting, so just a quick turnaround. I was right back in Vancouver for another 2 days. October the 5th, I attended the 50th anniversary of amalgamation and organizational meeting. So for anybody who doesn't know, October the 28th, Saturday, which is a Saturday, is the actual date of amalgamation of 50 years. And coincidentally enough, the Sunshine Club is also celebrating 50 years of their organization, and they're going to have an event starting on the 25th. There's going to be, our Parks and Recreation Department is going to be hosting a full day of events on the 28th. And Glenwood Center, the swimming pool, the multiplex are all going to be part of it, and they're going to be charging 1967 rates for admission. So I think children are like 10 cents or something like that, so it's kind of cool. And for all of you counselors, between 12 and 1:30, there's going to be entertainment, a lunch, there's going to be some presentations, a plaque cake cutting, local entertainment, and I have been asked by the organizing committee to extend an invitation to all of you on the 28th to join us at Echo Center, Echo 67 Center, to help celebrate, and there'll be a fair amount of activity going on there. So more to follow, and I'll give you a little more update at the next council meeting. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sobey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to start, on the 21st of September, we had the Twin Society, the AGM that happened. Again, we're looking desperately for volunteers to be joining this society and helping and joining a cultural exchange with our twin sister city of Vichery. So please, if anybody's interested in joining the society, just get a hold of me. My email's on the city website. And of course, I was also at the UBCM on the 24th till the 29th. I had the opportunity to meet with several people. I extended an invitation to our premier, John Horgan, to attend Port Alberni, so hopefully he'll take me up on that invite. I met with the seniors advocate for British Columbia, Isabel McKenzie. We discussed a lot of issues dealing with our seniors in our community. There's a lot of topics such as social isolation for seniors in and out of care. We also discussed for a provincial subsidies tax for all of our care facilities and the direct care hours that are including the direct care hours are very minimum when you're subsidized from the British Columbia for these beds for these care facilities. But they only include care aides. And I know this doesn't mean much, maybe for the city, but it's dealing with care for our seniors and giving them some type of social activity life. We had a discussion too, there's a lot of care facilities towards the province that responded to an RFP for extra beds. And unfortunately, the province, if I could say Vancouver Health Authority, canceled those RFPs. What they don't understand is that these nonprofit organizations in our committee, that most of them, all of them, applied for these extra beds, spend $10,000 or more to put an RFP together towards Vancouver Island Health Authority, and they're not able to recoup that money. So I'm actually going to be working with her on a provincial level, but hopefully affecting more inside my community and to getting those funds back in one way or another. We talked about certain advantage, but I'm not certain projects also for the community dealing with their aging community, but I'll be speaking on that on another date. So also the UBCM, when I came back, there was the Tour of the Rock supper at the Athletic Hall. I just want to thank everybody, the volunteers that put that together. And a big shout out and congratulations to Sergeant David Boyce and Constable Beth O'Connor, who represented our city with the Port Alberni RCMP. So a big shout out to them and thank you. On October the 1st, the SPCA had the Pause for a Cause. And I attended a bit later on that day, and I guess all went well because I sooner or later went home with a new kitten. So good for them for being able to talk me into that. Also, we got the Senior Advisory Committee coming up on the 12th. It'll be here at the City Hall at 5 o'clock, and I just want to, I'm sure it was 5 o'clock, but I just wanted to make sure that to understand that all these committees are open to the public and they're able to join in and participate in the meetings if they have any questions. So I sent out the invite to attend the Seniors Advisory Committee. Again, it's on October 12th. What we're working on the committee at this moment is there will be an upcoming provincial summit in Surrey on November 2nd and 3rd. And the initiatives that's being proposed is the Seniors Raising the Profile Project. This is a group of community-based nonprofit stakeholders joining together and playing a key role in supporting senior independence, resilience, and social connections. Stakeholders are also services that assist the seniors, such as programming and home care. We're trying to promote, especially in this community, physical activities, recreation, education, and even get into art programs for our seniors. And a big discussion will be coming up at this summit about affordable housing for our seniors, and discussing also issues dealing with transportation. There's a request for asking for us to support this a declaration to attend to be a demonstration of our community commitment towards our seniors and to ensure community-based senior services are set as a priority. And I just wanted to send a big message that with the 2016 census in Port Alberni, our population, they have it listed as 20,712 people that are over 65. And this is a concern that Council needs to recognize, is that close to 5,000 are seniors over the age of 65, and it's actually a growing number every year. So it's something that we need to address. So we'll be dealing with that with the Seniors Advisory Committee. And on a special note, I got a special announcement to announce that there's a nice young couple in our community. Cliff and Dorothy Bulow are celebrating their 70th wedding anniversary. And in 1947, they moved to Port Alberni from Courtenay. A year later, they purchased a house on 9th Avenue, which they're still there to this date. They were blessed with 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and 3 great-granddaughters. They keep busy to this date, always busy around the home and garden, active lifestyles such as playing cards at the Legion and also attending coffee at the QF, where we see them often. They celebrate 70 years of marriage, which for this active couple has been anything but dull, with the great memories of outdoor adventures here and abroad. So on behalf of council and the city, I wish to congratulate them, and it gives me hope into marriage. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the councillors to congratulate them, and that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sauvé. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I guess I'll just report a bit on what happened at the UBCM and the community forest meeting. The UBCM, I started out with a truck loggers dinner and got quite a lecture from some of the people on how hard it is to get employees in the forest industry. They gave us these cute bumper stickers, but you stop and think about it, the forest industry's kind of moved away, and people have gone against it to a point, and we really don't have that many people working, and the community forest, at their meeting, they were really concerned of having employees to do our forest. Because it's just getting to a point of being, people quit going into the forest industry when it was bad times, and some people are still in the forest industry, they're as old as I am, and that's possibly holding out some young people as well. So see what we can work on that. In talking with the Ministry of Forests, we discussed with the regional district, discussed the float houses in Great Central and Sprout Lake, and a bit in the Barkley and Clackawas Sound. And then we got to talk, then I got my 10 minutes to talk with the community forest and expanding tenure, and discussing the concept that we've talked about here in council of if we can put our profits to purchasing some tenure and putting it with our community forests. And that's something they promised to get back to us on, and understand the mayor is also talking to the minister about it. Ministry of Transport was talking about the transshipment port and the Vancouver Island ports in general. It seems like they're interested in transshipment, as you just heard from the mayor, and they were looking at some of that. The Minister of Agriculture was at I don't know if it's called a round table or what it was, a whole bunch of ministers up front, made some very interesting comments. One, she says she's going to grow BC, and the one that really got my attention was they're going to have real food in the hospitals grown in BC. Up until now, with the changes in 2002, except for our hospital, which still has, as far as I know, a kitchen, all the food was coming from Toronto, freeze-dried and rehydrated at for the Victoria area, rehydrated at the Jubilee Hospital at 33, 34 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just a teeny bit over freezing and was not good health for the workers. Just as all that was going down, as how I found out so well, I guess, as my mother was just going into the hospital for a prolonged length of time with a broken hip, and as I was going down talking to the people in the hospital, I was finding these things out. The Minister of Mines was in that group, and she was a very interesting person, and she's promoting LNG to China on the basis to reduce the greenhouse gases and their pollution. When I made a comment earlier about 600 and 700 or whatever those particulates are, that's usually where they're from. And the last time I was in a place called Hong Kong, you couldn't see anything in the afternoon because the winds were bringing the pollution through from China. So be grateful where you live. And she's also studying fracking, noting there's some changes made, and comment that the Site C dam is renewable energy and non-polluting. Minister of Jobs and Trades talked about training workers, which is something we've got to do. The previous government started that, and I hope these ones can keep that up. Also went to the Korean consulate, and I gave out my business card with Pat Deacons. They had an open house on the Thursday, so I got to miss the banquet and met a lot of interesting people. But the interesting part that I found is all the business people from Korea and from Canada that were there were interested in getting hog fuel. They wanted to make pellets, or they wanted to do something. It wasn't so much pellets as other things. And when I talked to them, they had a whole bunch, but had a whole bunch of salt water and didn't like that. So I told them I got acres and acres of nothing but more acres of hog fuel around here that's dry and has never seen the salt chuck. So hopefully they may come by and say something. The there we go. Community Forest is doing well. They got Probin right now as a prime contractor, starting at Colson's, and they are looking to see what they can do to increase their cut. In talking to, they're going to be writing a letter to the minister and trying to discuss it with the district manager who lives in Nanaimo. And I think I'm going to quit there and make a motion we accept all our reports.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council, that brings us to new business, and there's one item in new business, I believe, and it's, sorry?
I might have one.
You might have one? All right. You will. Okay, so there might be two. The first item that is officially on the agenda is a request that I'm making, and so I'll make the motion that Council for the City of Port Alberni provide a letter of supporting the City of Langford's bid to host Amazon's second headquarters. And if it get a seconder, then I'll speak to it.
I'll second it.
Second that.
Okay, so we have lots of seconders, and thank you. And the only way the bid is going to happen and have the slightest chance of success is if this is seen as a pan-Vancouver Island effort. And certainly the mayor of Langford and his bid team fully recognize that. For us in Port Alberni and for us as island residents, this is a huge opportunity. But it also means that in order for this to be successful with, over a relatively short period of time, an additional 50,000 jobs, plus however many supporting jobs, not all those people can live south of the Malahat. They're going to have to live north of the Malahat, and probably the majority of them will. So that means we need to significantly boost our infrastructure. We have a great corridor, we just don't use it, and that's the Island Railway corridor. And if that were to be transformed into high-speed rail from Nanaimo to Victoria, instead of being, last week it took me 3 hours starting at 5 o'clock in the morning to get to Victoria. And now with some significant closures on the Malahat, could be even longer. So high-speed rail, Nanaimo to Victoria would be looking at about 20 minutes. And that would make basically Comox Valley, Alberni Valley, right into right into Nanaimo, quite accessible for Victoria on a commuting basis if there was a high-speed rail. So I see it as a huge opportunity in terms of education, a huge opportunity in terms of investment, and a huge opportunity in terms of the further development of this particular aspect of our economy. And you know that the second largest institution in Canada for producing IT professionals is the University of Victoria. So it's only exceeded by the University of Waterloo. So it's, we already have a good opportunity, a good crack at it. We're just on the other side of the water from Amazon's current headquarters, and it's sure worth a shot. So we're proposing that the City of Port Alberni provide a letter of support. Councillor Sobe, and then Councillor Alman.
I think when I read this and heard that Amazon's coming to Vancouver Island, the first thing that came up is why is Port Alberni not in the bidding process or even looking at such a thing? So I don't know if it's too much of a big product, but how does the community actually find out of these major companies coming to the island to be able to discover this? So obviously Langford, we're lucky enough to had some information on this, but again, how do we find out about all these?
Well, it's been well known, well advertised, in the news for a while. They've been pretty categoric in terms of one of their criteria is that they're not particularly interested in looking at a community that's under 1 million in terms of size. And even if you put everybody on Vancouver Island together, it's not 1 million people. And it does have a major impact on whatever city they're in, and all you have to do is look at Seattle to see the impact that it has there. But on the other hand, if we think it's worthwhile, then it's not going to happen for us as an individual city, but it may happen for us as an island. Councillor Alamani?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just speaking from the technology aspect of it, I have lots of friends and lots of contacts in Victoria. It's a hub of technology for Canada, and whether it's realistic for Amazon to locate in Langford or not, I think if they're serious about putting a bid forward, they won't be able to do it on their own, and they would need the support of the rest of Vancouver Island in order to provide the infrastructure, provide the residential spaces. They're talking about 50,000 employees, but but you're really talking probably 2 or 3 times that once you factor in the supports needed. So it would be a game changer for the capital region, and would really turn it into something that would compete with Vancouver as far as technology is concerned. So I think it's obviously something that we should support, and whatever we can do to help them is going to be needed.
Sorry, I didn't indicate earlier, but there is a bit of urgency. We've got about 2 weeks to get this letter of support into Langford, so it's not a lot of time. Anything else, Council?
Competing against Abbotsford, aren't they?
Well, it's Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, larger Canadian cities. Abbotsford is maybe talking about it. I'm not sure about Abbotsford, but certainly Vancouver is considering it. But it's, you have to look and see what are the incentives, what are the things that we can offer, and I think Vancouver Island has many things to offer that larger cities can't offer, so.
Lifestyle.
Yep. Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. And Councillor Alberni, you indicated you might have some.
I might, so now I do. So in a little while, this is really I guess a notice of motion for the next meeting, and what it stems from is concern in the community again about access to logging roads and in our wilderness areas around the city. There's tons of reports again on social media of people being locked out behind gates, and not only being locked out behind gates, but being told by security that those people who are also behind the gate will just have to stay there overnight. So there's a real concern in the community about it, and I'd like for council to consider sending some letters to the Ministry of Forest, the companies involved, our MLA. So I'll bring that forward to the next meeting. So just a heads up for council on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Alberni. This brings us, council, then to question periods, an opportunity for public and press to ask questions of mayor and council, if anybody wishes to do that. He still has the energy. Yes, please come forward.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Neil Anderson, Carmichael. Just a follow-up, if I may.
Sure.
It's my understanding is that the issue I brought up in a number of meetings, that the track repair is now complete.
CAO, is it?
Mr. Mayor, as I understand it, a large portion of the track has been repaired, as well as several small areas have been repaired under warranty. We've intentionally left a couple small spot problems for the purposes of monitoring those over the winter, and we'll see if they deteriorate over the winter, and the intention is to repair those small spots after the winter weather. So the track is open and it's safe to use, and will be in service from here forward.
So if I understand you right, there are still some repairs to be made in the future.
As I understand it, there are several small areas that we're monitoring, so that those will be addressed after the winter.
Okay, because I've made a trip around the track and there's still bubbles that were repaired in some manner, but they still exist, and there's at least one that hasn't been repaired. And
if you would like to plot those and point them out to our staff,
I'd like to walk around with someone from council so they understand exactly what I'm talking about. Well, and you see what I see?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I just know the companies here do warranty service.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reason I'm asking the question. Is it complete or not?
Yeah.
If it's not,
No,
if it is complete, then I have a problem with our
I see it also,
expenditures.
but until the city staff tells me the job is complete, I'm just going to keep my opinions until the job is complete.
Well, I'm not. Listen, I'm asking right now, is it complete? A fair question, right?
Yeah. And you said
I'm understanding that there is some concerns, but you're watching them, and I accept that.
And we may be watching the same spots that you're identifying, but you may have identified some spots that we're not aware of, so please let us
And
know
I'm
where
sure
they are.
I have. So and I intend to continue asking the questions, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. It's good to know that we've got an eye on it. Okay, council, motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, council.